This is episode number 529 of the Health Fitness Podcast by InnerFight, brought to you in association with Smith Street Paleo. Be sure to hop over to smithstreetpaleo.com. Check out all the yummy paleo food over there. Meals delivered to your house. Goodies delivered right to you. You need to go and check it all out right now. smithstreetpaleo.com. Welcome back to another edition of the show, folks. This is episode number 529, and this is the start of our third series. We're talking all about indoor training in the hot months over the next 4 weeks. We've got an awesome lineup. We're going to start and kick it off today and talk about why we suffer in the heat. We're then going to move into different ways of training indoors, bringing your running indoors, bringing your cycling indoors, and what you all want to hear about. We're going to leave right until the last week to the fourth episode where we're going to talk all about food. This is indoor training in the hot months. This is another episode series from us. There are 4 parts. Here we go with number 1. Who else to get with me for this? It affects a lot of the endurance people. Tom Walker, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Mate, I think last time you were on the show, you were asking me the questions. Today we're going to try and hash this together. Well, not hash it. We're going to do a very good job of it, mate.
Yeah.
But obviously, with the temperatures heating up, we're finding, obviously, not only just the people that have to run a few laps around the gym complaining and suffering, but endurance athletes are hit quite solidly with the heat. So, mate, I think the first question is the title of this show: why do we suffer in the heat? What's your thoughts, mate?
There's 2 main reasons for this. One is a lot to do with the mind and how we perceive the heat, and the other is actual mechanisms that cause the body to actually slow itself down and stop itself from getting into trouble.
Right.
So the first one, which is probably the one which people can get their head around the most, actually will make the biggest difference, and that is how they perceive the heat. And what we mean by that is how they deal with it mentally. So I think probably 2 weeks ago, we saw a big temperature rise.
Yeah.
And suddenly all feedback on training runs, bikes, etc. just like flooded in. It was like, oh my God, I've got no legs today.
Yeah.
I feel awful today. I'm not recovering. And it was like almost coincided perfectly with the day that here the temperature just stepped up a notch, and suddenly it was 32, 35 like, regularly.
Yeah.
And well, I know you saw it with your clients.
Yeah, mate. That's when it's quite funny, because that's when Training Peaks somehow becomes like a weather forecasting platform, a weather reporting platform, and it was so hot today. And I remember writing for my clients some nice feedback, and I'm like, yeah, this is not a place where we share the weather. I'm quite aware that it was 32, 35 degrees today. Literally overnight, mate, it did shoot up, and I think that's the thing as well. Our perception of the heat and what it's going to do to us literally changes overnight when we know that the weather is a little bit niggly.
Exactly. And this is a place where we can use little tricks and tips for people, which we'll talk more about in the last episode. But when people look at like cooling collars, cooling vests, ingesting like ice slurries. Mate, you in Sri Lanka was thinking of the hottest place you'd ever been, and knowing that you could deal with that because you dealt with it then. I actually go the other way and think of the coldest I've ever been, and that's how you can deal with it as well.
That's hilarious, because when I'm in the hot, mate, all I'm thinking about is like it could have been somewhere hotter. Because if you start thinking about like a cold shower or an ice bucket or something like that, do you not sort of start to want to crave it? Like you want it?
No, I get the feeling back of how I felt when I've been at my coldest. So I'm actually on a ski lift in Whistler in minus 20 degrees when I just could not.
Naked or?
No, it's fully.
It could be an option.
And your body associates back to that time that you were that cold, and just helps calm you and feel like you're not as hot, even though you are.
Is there science behind this?
There's a bit of science out there, mate.
Really?
Yeah, certainly, as well as showing people a different temperature number.
Yeah.
And then saying, how do you feel? And they say, oh, not as hot as I was in the previous time I was in here. And actually the temperature was exactly the same. It's just the number's different.
I guess we're going down the route of similar, like when we give the different tests that I think we've spoken about before on the show, where people have been given painkillers or performance enhancing tablets, and then someone else has just been given piece of sugar pills, and the guys that have sugar pills also experience. We're talking about it with Ramsey Ross in a previous show.
Yes.
And he was telling us all about, he did a lot of study into EPO, and he found out that a lot of people, the increase in performance with the guys for sugar was not as much as the guys that had a drug, but there was definitely an increase. So we're sort of almost tricking the brain into, or in this case, if we know it's 50 degrees and we only get told it's 45, we might react a lot differently.
Yeah, it's the placebo effect, which is real, definitely real.
It is.
The other one we get to is the actual mechanisms of why we get hot and overheat and our performance suffers. And that comes down to essentially the body prioritizing heat dissipation over performance. So you need to get more blood out to your skin. So to help the skin cool down. So blood gets pushed out to the peripheries a little bit more, which is why you sometimes see to become more vascular in the heat. And then obviously you sweat, but all this is a cost of the muscles that are wanting to work.
Right.
So the muscles that are actually helping with the performance, they're not getting as much blood pumped to them. So they're not getting as much oxygen. They're not getting as many vitamins and minerals going there to help them continue with the contractions. Yeah. And so naturally you see that performance will decrease, but the body can't stop itself from doing that. It's an inbuilt mechanism to stop you overheating and dying. Yeah. So actually, for people who want to improve performance, this is where they need to go through some heat adaptation to then become not only perceptually more comfortable in the heat, but actually let their body adapt in the mechanical way as well.
How much of it do you think is adaptation, mate? And when like in your personal opinion, and use any geekery you want, but in your personal opinion, how much can we adapt? And then is there a point where it goes beyond? Because we're talking about, like, in Sri Lanka, I was super hot, and when I've been out in 50, 55 degree heat, like, it is really hot. So is my personal belief that level of adaptation helps us to a certain extent, but when it gets to 50, 55 degrees, like you said, the body, it's a natural defense system of the body to, like, stop us from doing something when we're overheating too much.
Yeah. They show a lot in the adaptation. There's a lot of studies out there that show people who go into hot conditions adapted and people who go in non-adapted. And they compare it to time trial performances, usually in like normal temperatures, which is around 10 anywhere up to like 20 degrees. Right. And there's seems to be around a 5 to 10%, sometimes up to 15% difference for the people who are adapted. Right. But again, that's hard to know whether that is more in your mind or whether it's more in the mechanism type of thing. Yeah. From my own experience, I went through, I've been through a few heat adaptation studies, like taking part in some. Right. And once you get to the point of being so hot, you feel like you're going to pass out. And one occasion I have. And once you hit that, it's almost like, okay, I know where the line is. And now I can push up to that line every time. I think if you don't go there, you've always got this like, how hot can I really get? And at the end of the day, you just shut down.
So for people that want to train in the heat here in Dubai in summer, we really recommend that you buy a sauna for the year round, and you train a lot. You put a treadmill in it, and people do or have done things like this, especially to prepare for things like desert marathons. On the flip side as well, one of my friends that went to the Arctic to run a marathon, he managed to get a big chilling warehouse, and they let him put a treadmill in one of the freezers so he could practice running in that.
Works both ways.
Yeah, it definitely works both ways. So I'm not sure everyone should get a sauna, but I think knowing that limit is quite important as well, mate, isn't it?
Yeah, and you actually knowing at what point you are really going to be in trouble. So you actually start to feel cold before you black out. Yeah. So you start to feel like you're shivering. And you're like, okay, this is now weird. Yeah. And then you think, oh, okay, actually, I'm not that hot. And then next thing you're woken up.
So this actually happened a few times when we were in Sri Lanka. So people would be sat around at the end of the race or something, and they're like, oh, I've got goosebumps. And
Yeah.
I was just sitting watching for them to fall over, because it's one of the precursors to a complete blackout when the heat's over and it was still really hot, but they're in a tiny bit of shade, and they think it's because it's in the shade that they're now getting cold.
Yeah.
But it's still, it was 38, 40 degrees, and they're like, oh, I'm starting to get goosebumps. And I was like, oh my God, you're going to pass out any minute now.
It's almost the last line of defense
Yeah.
for the body to say stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you ignore it well enough, you'll go.
Yeah, exactly. So, mate, if we look at it, like if we try and sort of bring this a little bit together and give people some advice here, if we look at the title, what we're actually trying to get over in this first episode, why we suffer in the heat. I mean, everyone's going to suffer because it is a human body defense mechanism.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're saying. But also at the same time, we need to be aware that we can do a lot and train in a lot of different ways to be able to continue training as well.
Exactly. I think it's no longer an excuse now with the technology you have indoors with training and the facilities available here in Dubai. You should be able to train all year round.
We're going to speak a little bit more about that in episode 2 and 3. We're going to talk about how to bring your running indoors and also how to bring your cycling indoors and what adjustments you should make there. But mate, talking a little bit generally before we sort of wrap up this episode and go into the other ones, what are we seeing happening to the heart rate for example, if someone goes out, and let's take a runner, because a lot of people are out running and a lot of people are now saying, oh, I've been working so hard on my running all season and now it's regressing in the heat. What do we see happen to the heart rate if someone's running at 5 minutes a K, they've been running comfortably for, let's say, 140 beats, 5 minutes a K, they can do it for 5K. What do you expect to see happen when the temperatures jump up from, we've been seeing great winter this year, 30 degrees, we're now heading up to the 40s?
Yeah. Number one thing you will see is like a standing resting heart rate will be elevated already, because you're already trying to cool yourself down. So even if you just walk outside now and you're standing in 38, 40 degrees, your resting heart rate will be higher than if you went out and stood in 20.
Right.
So that is already shifts every single part of the zones straight up.
Right.
Then as soon as you start running and you will start to sweat quicker, you will then start to need more, as we talked about at the beginning, skin blood flow to help cool you down.
Yep.
Because that passes out through, so you're taking heat away from the skin into the air temperature around you. Right. So that's why more blood gets put out there to take more heat away.
Yep.
When that happens, you will then elevate need or demand for more blood to go to the muscles that are working and to be running. Yeah. And so naturally you're going to see 5, 10, 15 beat shift in paces. So people who have been training, we subscribe a lot of Maffetone training or Zone 2 training, and like you said, could run comfortably 5 minutes per K at 140. 5 minutes per K now might be at 150.
Right.
And
sorry to jump in there, mate. Would you prefer to see that heart rate jump up to 150, or do you want the pace to back off to say, let's stick at 140, no matter if it means dropping that pace down to a 530?
I think it depends on the goal of the runner, but if you're in a fitness building phase, then you're just going to have to slow down. Like Zone 2 is Zone 2 for you. That's your cardiac stress that is going to inhibit the things we want in order to improve aerobic conditioning. And jumping up to 150 is still a 150 heart rate. It's not like feels like 140. 150 is 150. And so your whole recovery schedule will shift with it. So, but if someone is planning on running a 5K in 20 minutes, then you need the mechanical stress or the speed stress of running at 4 minutes per K. Right. So therefore, ignore heart rate. You need to get in the reps running at the speed you're going to run the speed at. And
you're just going to have to adjust the volume of training, and which is basically going to reduce the exposure to those extreme temperatures.
Exactly.
Because there comes a point where that sort of graph, the heart rate just can't keep climbing anymore, and you sort of just drop off the end of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's some of the things, folks, why we suffer in the heat, and sort of what you can maybe do mentally to try and adapt to it early on. But I think one of the main things and the key takeaway from this, the first episode in this series, is that you can still train through the heat. You just have to adapt your training slightly to it. You have to make some tweaks. You have to understand that you might have to back off the pace, or your heart rate's just going to be a little bit higher in that time. As well, you probably can't get in the super long rides or runs. There's the days, especially if you're based here in Dubai, the days have gone of you being able to get out and ride for sort of 5 hours starting at 8 a.m.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think they're past. If you're listening from somewhere else in the world and you are getting a little bit of increase in temperature, I think you're going to have a little bit of what we're talking about here, but it's mainly at those temperatures sort of 35 plus that we're getting this. If you're in the UK and it's gone from 10 degrees to 20 degrees, there's not really a problem with heat there. You're not really going to suffer too much in that type of heat.
Yeah, I wondered about this. I actually looked up some stats on it, and I found one study that showed even a difference from 10 degrees and 25 degrees, which 25 sounds quite nice here now for us.
Yeah.
Some people like living in the UK, that's summer.
Yeah.
And 10 degrees we'd probably find pretty cold, but that's a normal winter, sort of midwinter temperature.
Yeah.
You can see around a 12% difference,
which is
in
quite,
performance.
It's for real.
Yeah,
it's not just 2 or 3%, is it?
Nah, but that's over a marathon distance. So
Yeah.
it's actually the time, obviously body heat. So in 10 degrees, after like 30 minutes, you'd expect to be sweating fairly good.
Yeah.
Like a fairly high amount.
Yeah.
But in 25, you're going to be sweating fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's just that constant rise in body temperature you see. So anything above 25, it just means you're having all those onset of fatigue-inducing like mechanisms the body puts in place to slow you down just come quicker. So like you say, you're still in the European summer going to have to think about training through the heat.
Yeah, but it's going to be slightly different to what we're talking about here.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
the main thing. There we go. That is a wrap for episode 1. That's why we suffer in the heat. Be sure to tune in to next week's show where we're going to talk all about bringing your running indoors. When we've wrapped up with running, we're going to talk about bringing your cycling indoors. And the 4th episode in this series in 3 weeks' time from now is going to be all about, which some of you might favor, eating and drinking for the heat to fuel your training. That's been episode 1. Stand by for episode 2 in a week's time.